Mr. President, I want to take a few minutes today to speak about television and to alert my colleagues to a troubling situation. Recently, the only VHF television station licensed in Delaware canceled the one nightly public affairs program which covered Delaware issues, closed its local studio, and moved almost all of its employees out of Delaware. That station, WHYY TV, did this even though the community that is supposed to serve first, that should be its primary focus, is Wilmington, Delaware. This is offensive and it's wrong. These and other actions led the city of Wilmington last week to challenge the license renewal of WHYY. I understand and commend the city's complaint, and I hope it will bring about better service to Delawareans. Frankly, I think WHYY was emboldened to make these changes by the weakened oversight of the regulatory agency charged with making sure that broadcast stations serve the public interest, the Federal Communications Commission. If this sort of snub to the community of license proceeds with no repercussions, we could be seeing less and less local service from stations all across the country. If the requirement to serve the public interest has no meaning, if the broadcast station provides its community license with nothing more than what we can get from a national cable, satellite, or internet channel, then the public is getting a bad deal for giving away spectrum at no charge. At the core of the FCC's licensing policies right from the beginning is a principle that every community of appreciable size needs and deserves its own station. As a nation, we have licensed broadcast stations to cities all across America. In America, we do not have nationwide broadcast channels. You get that on cable channels like HBO or Discovery, either through cable or Dish. TV channels are local. These stations are granted free use of public airwaves, are required to be responsive to local needs. Each has a duty to determine the programming appropriate for its viewing community and then make its programming decisions based on those needs. That's the deal. You get the spectrum, you take care of the local needs. Broadcasters are, in all intents and purposes, temporary trustees of the public airways. For that privilege, they must serve their own communities. It is exactly because broadcasters must address local issues and needs that the FCC required cable companies to carry local broadcast channels. For the same reason, satellite carriers have been restricted in their ability to bring distant network signals into homes that should be receiving their local stations. That all makes sense. Yet unless the FCC steps up and makes it clear to broadcasters that their duty to serve the public interest is real and includes making program decisions that are responsive to the communities of license, I fear that the public is going to lose out and local needs will go unmet. As long as stations think that they can get away with doing less, they will be tempted to do less. If there are no consequences to ignoring their obligations, they will take shortcuts and our communities will be the worse off for it. If that happens, our historic allocation of channels all across the country designed to ensure community-oriented service will become a sham. I call the concerns to attention of my colleagues today because this is what is happening in my own hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. We have one VHF station in Delaware. It's Channel 12, WHYY TV. Its city of license is Wilmington, Delaware, and it's a public television station. WHYY TV was not always on Channel 12. In fact, it started out on a UHF channel in Philadelphia. But in the 1960s, when commercial station operating in Channel 12 in Wilmington ran into problems, WHYY beat out the competition for the VHF license. It really was no secret that WHYY made this move not because it wanted to relocate from Philadelphia to Wilmington, but because it wanted to move from a UHF channel to a stronger VHF channel with greater viewership. However, this move, nonetheless, was tied to a promise that the station's primary duty was to serve the interests and needs of the people of Wilmington, Delaware, its new city of license. Unfortunately, it has been a near constant struggle for our community to get the attention that it was promised. When its license was first granted, WHYY agreed to present 16.5 hours per week of Delaware-oriented program. Let me repeat that. They promised and agreed to present 16.5 hours per week of Delaware-oriented programming. By the time its license came up for renewal in 1978, it was providing less than 3.5 hours per week. As renewal of its license was challenged, WHYY added some additional Wilmington-oriented programming. Nonetheless, the FCC conditioned the grant of its license on demonstrating a commitment to local programs broadcast from Wilmington rather than Philadelphia. WHYY was again chastised for failing to serve Wilmington during its 1983 license renewal proceeding. The criticism touched on sub-issues as the location of its main studio, its station log, staff and management, the production of non-network programming, and the amount of locally produced programming focused on Delaware. The FCC ordered WHYY to base personnel in Wilmington capable of addressing the many failures. With the diminishing of FCC oversight of broadcasters' responsiveness to local needs, WHYY's service to Wilmington diminished as well. Its main studio has long been in Philadelphia, and the website for both the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Public Broadcasting Service listed as a Philadelphia station. This is even though its license was based on being in Wilmington, Delaware. In June this year, WHYY announced it was closing and putting up for sale its studio in Wilmington, closing its news bureau in Dover, and eliminating most of the 16 employment positions in Delaware. In short, it is virtually leaving our state and its city of license. WHYY's programming decisions also mock its community of license. Gone is the daily afternoon report that focused on issues of interest to those living in and around Wilmington. Today, Delaware's only VHF station has committed to producing merely a single 30-minute weekly program focused on our state. The program is scheduled to air at 10 p.m. on Fridays and to be rebroadcast over the weekend. And if you look at the listings of locally produced programs that are touted on WHYY's webpage, you would be hard-pressed to find programs focused on Wilmington. WHYY has the audacity to rationalize its cut in local programs by saying it will provide more Delaware-focused stories on its Philadelphia-licensed FM radio station and online. So they get a broadcasting license, and the programming is going to be on their radio station in Philadelphia and online. You don't have to be a genius to see this is not an acceptable substitute. This plan leaves entirely unserved those who look at television for information about their local community. Reporting through other media is not the same as reporting on television, and to do so, WHYY does not lead a TV license. The people of my state feel shortchanged, and they should, and they are. Especially because WHYY operates a non-commercial educational television station that receives support from tax revenues as well as individual and corporate donations. The public expects that the licensee will be responsible and attentive to the obligations it holds to its community of license. There is no doubt WHYY has failed in this regard. Those of us who live in Delaware understand that we're situated in one of those areas in the country where airwaves are crowded. Also, television channel assignments to major cities and adjacent states have left little room in the spectrum for allocations to communities in our state. I know other states face the same problem. The television stations to which Delawareans tune their sets predominantly broadcast out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Salisbury, Maryland. These out-of-stations, however, owe only a secondary obligation to address the needs of the Delaware viewers. Mr. President, broadcasting in this country is coming through a significant transition. But the promise that comes with digital transmission should mean states like Delaware and communities like Wilmington will receive more attention to their local needs and interests, not less. That was the promise of digitalization. That was the promise of high-definition TV. That was the promise of broadband. The allocation of a channel to a particular community must bring with it some special duty, or else it has no meaning at all. The FCC needs to reassert its role to insist the licensees, companies that get free use, that's free use of the public's airwaves, take their responsibilities to serve the public interest seriously. If they do not, we will see more stations like WHYY take advantage of lax policies. We will have more citizens in more communities left with little or no local programming. The complaint filed by the City of Wilmington last week against WHYY's license provides the FEC with a perfect opportunity to give real meaning to a broadcaster's obligation to its community of license. I strongly, strongly encourage the FCC to use this chance and act decisively to protect the public interest. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.